Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, May 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 115 days. The game against Michigan in 199 days. Yes, we're under 200. It's practically here. Better run out and buy that turkey now. Thanksgiving right around the corner. So is the Michigan game. So is the football season. So is our good buddy Tony Gerdeman. Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com joins us today to discuss a change in the Big Ten's scheduling rules, which we can talk about how much the rules were rules and not just sort of guidelines. But Brett McMurphy of the Action Network reporting that the Big Ten is, quote, strongly considering removing its requirement for league teams to play a Power 5 non-conference team every year. That change would go into effect next year. Tony, I guess the first question is, okay, the rule went in because they wanted everyone to play better non-conference opponents. So why is this rule, and how much of a rule it is we can get into later, but why is this rule now potentially going out the window?
I wish I knew, because I don't understand the logic behind it. And I guess you just throw it into TV is probably my first thing. There's TV, there's schools just wanting to buy wins now that they have the money to do so. But some part of me is thinking, does NBC, Fox, CBS, do they not want to give any of their inventory to ESPN? And how much of a factor is that you don't want? Because if Ohio State goes to, say, Tennessee, that would be an ESPN game. Now, but the flip side of that, Tom, is if it's a home and home, the next year you'd have Tennessee on your network. So I don't like anything about this thought process or this idea.
Yeah, this is a lot like the college football rules changes where they're going to not stop the clock on first downs anymore. And it's like, well, see, the idea is we're going to shave time off the games and it'll be a better experience for fans. And it's like, you're just giving them less football and the same amount of commercials, which means proportionally it's going to be more commercials. So I think my default assumption on anything that changes in college football these days is, okay, so this is probably better for TV in some way. So how is this better for TV? And, if you get rid of the Ohio State, Tennessee home and home, then it's Ohio State playing Western Kentucky one year and Ohio State playing Tulsa the next year, and they're both home games. And so your TV partners get an extra game. I am with you, though. I mean, what are we looking for here in terms of non-conference games? You want the big power non-conference series, and Ohio State has been kind of the poster child of scheduling big non-conference series. Notre Dame going on right now. They've got they have at various times in the past had Oklahoma and who else have we seen? They had Oregon home and home. They've had a bunch of really good home and home series over the years, and those are always kind of tentpole events. Those are the big noon kickoff games, or used to be the ESPN or ABC primetime games, would now be the CBS 3:30 game or the NBC maybe primetime game, and now you're giving yourself more TV inventory, but not necessarily as good TV inventory. So I think TV is definitely one of the very possible explanations for this. Another one, though, I think is, are they looking at maybe expanding the conference schedule where they currently play 9 Big Ten games? They have not announced yet anything official on the 2024 schedule and beyond. That's when USC, UCLA come in. Is it possible they're thinking about expanding to 10 conference games, and then, you only have 2 non-conference games outside of that, and you don't want to play 11 Power 5 conference teams if you were an Indiana or a Purdue or an Illinois or, one of those teams that's sort of fighting and scrapping to get to bowl eligibility. Maryland does not want to play 11 Power 5 conference teams. So what's the likelihood that it's something driven by, hey, we're going to maybe have an extra conference game on top of the ones we already have, and so we just don't want to add another Power 5 game mandatory on top of that for everyone else?
That would be the most agreeable reason for this, but the fact that that's not part of the report it's just speculation. Is maybe it's because of this, and it's like, why wasn't that information also provided to Brett or whomever? Like saying, we're thinking about doing this because we're thinking about doing this. We're thinking about getting rid of the non-conference requirement because we're thinking of going to 10 conference games. And it doesn't sound like that's the gist of what is happening. It's like, we're thinking about getting rid of the non-conference games, and then we're left to think possibly because they're going to 10 games. I mean, is that one reason? And I'm not a huge fan of going to 10 games in lieu of getting rid of home and homes with the rest of the nation. However, I guess that would make the 12-team playoff more exciting, or more, you'd get to see the matchups that you used to see in the regular season. And now I can hear the people, see, we told you the 12-team playoffs devalues the regular season. And it's not the playoffs that have done it. It would be the scheduling that has done it. Because, Tom, there is no reason for programs to get less competitive with their scheduling now, because you can't afford a loss or two. And so you should be able to provide to your fans and to your television partners the kinds of games that bring in great ratings, instead of just, we did better than Superman and Lois. You know, that's like, you could shoot for the moon on these things, but instead it's like, well, we just want to make sure we're getting, you know, better than what we have been getting. And I think there's some missed opportunities, because just because Ohio State might be going to, we'll say, Tennessee again, and so that's not going to be part of your inventory this week. Alabama is at Wisconsin that same week. You know, like, you will have games. And one last thing, not to interrupt you, but I will. But NBC at 7:30, they get the night game. Here you go, Tulsa at Ohio State. Enjoy, everybody.
Yeah, it does. You know, it feels like I'm not super convinced that it's going to be a 10-team conference, conference schedule. And I don't think this is, you know, I think one of the things that kind of has me concerned about, you know, the overall arc of this, and that makes me think that this is a real profiles and courage move, where it's just, you know, Maryland wants 3 winnable non-conference games, Indiana wants 3 winnable non-conference games so they can get to 6 wins, is the same report from Brett McMurphy said they are still allowed to schedule FCS opponents. So Ohio State has Youngstown State on the schedule. Is there any real purpose to scheduling Youngstown State as opposed to Akron or Kent State or Ohio University or Miami or Bowling Green or Toledo? No, there is not. And that's something that the Big Ten had kind of done away with for a while, and now it's back. So yeah, it feels like this is, you're just sort of trying to give your teams a slightly easier path to a 6-6 bowl, which is going to mean even more in the 12-team college football playoff era. But all of your coaches have bowl bonuses in their contracts, so let's go get that cash, son. So I think there's a decent amount of my brain that's just telling me this is just, let's make things a little easier on our teams and not put yourself at a competitive disadvantage. Which, does Ohio State need to play Youngstown State? Could they play even if you play a mid-level Power 5 team, your odds of winning those games are functionally the same if you're Ohio State.
I wonder if the amount they're paying to Youngstown State is like maybe a few $100,000 less than they would pay to an Akron or something like that. And with the whole COVID thing, if that's maybe the reason, and I haven't seen the numbers on the contracts, but I just wonder, as I'm trying to figure out why go back to the Youngstown State. Well, I think perhaps because they didn't have to pay him as much.
Yeah, and with the TV contract being worth $13.72 this year, money very tight around the Big Ten right now. So I don't think you get to trumpet your incredibly lucrative record-breaking TV contract and also turn out your pockets like you're on the pay poor tax card on chance on Monopoly. I don't think you can probably play both sides of the street like that. But people may try. And this is never, I guess, the third thing before we get into the whole Michigan thing and who Michigan needs to schedule to make the college football playoff. I think the third thing is it's a 12-team college football playoff. So now you have teams are going to want to try and schedule themselves 3 wins. So then if you go 7-2 in conference and you're 10-2, you're pretty much in the 12-team college football playoff field. That's something that I'm sure, Penn State would love to make a college football playoff, whether it's a 4-team or a 12-team field. Michigan would love to make that field every year. Nebraska under Matt Rule would love to try and make that field. Wisconsin under Luke Fickell would love to try and make that field. Iowa under Kirk Ferentz would love to try and make that field. And, Iowa's going to be playing Iowa State every year, but Wisconsin doesn't have an in-state rival. Nebraska doesn't have an in-state rival. So if you can schedule yourself 3 winnable non-conference games in the future. And then you just have to go 7-2 or maybe even 6-3 to sneak into the college football playoff. That, much as it gives you an easier route to 6 wins in a bowl, it might give you an easier route to 10 wins in a college football playoff bowl.
And with all of this, you still don't know how good teams are respective to the rest of the nation, because we're only seeing them play in the Big Ten. And depending on how that schedule shakes out, if they only lose, if say Nebraska goes 9-3 and looks good for 9 games, but their losses are to Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, what have you learned? And I just don't like confining everything to your conference opponents. That's one reason why I don't like the 10 games. I certainly don't like getting rid of all Power 5 non-conference, because there are plenty of non-conference Power 5 opponents that you can go buy a win from. I think it's just there's some fear there that Ohio State paid Oregon State at the right time. Somebody waits a couple of years later and gets them now or last year. That's the wrong time. And so I think there's fear from some athletic directors about are they going to be as bad as we hope in 7 and 12 years when we scheduled this? And hey, you know what? Let's not deal with it. Let's just schedule Memphis.
And, I think you've seen that happen over the years, and you've also seen them in Ohio State. It feels like Ohio State has had terrible luck scheduling Washington over the years in terms of getting a good Washington team. They scheduled Washington in the early 90s when Washington was the national championship Don James teams. And by the time you got to the Washington games, the 93 team was okay, but you got into like the 2003 team, and that was a terrible Washington team that I think they might have gotten their coach fired that year. And a terrible 2007 team with future NFL mock draft superstar Jake Locker leading a very bad Washington team. They've had, you can schedule teams and think you're getting a great team, and you end up, someone played Notre Dame the year they went 4-8. They were probably not expecting to play a 4-8 Notre Dame team. So, that will there's some fluctuation in teams that trying to predict a decade out. You never know what you're going to get. The point you made earlier was a good one, which is college football is the sport where you have maybe the least in terms of like cross-conference data points. Because if you look at hockey, you generally, at the end of the season, you're playing all the teams in the other conferences in the NHL. You know who the other good teams, you can have a pretty good sense for, hey, the Western Conference is absolutely killing the Eastern Conference this year, so the Western Conference is probably a lot better. Same thing in basketball. Baseball at this point is like that. The football, you have a decent sense because you're playing in the NFL. You're playing teams from other divisions, cross division, other teams in your conference. And football, you'll have SEC teams that play their 8-game SEC schedule, and then you play 4 crappy non-conference games. And if the SEC teams are not playing out of conference very much, everyone just sort of assumes, okay, well, these teams will almost be good because look, they beat the team with the number 10 next to them. And it's like, well, okay, what did the number 10 mean? We don't know because you don't have a Big 10 ACC challenge or an SEC Big 12 challenge like you do in basketball. So you don't have those cross-conference data points. And it's just kind of, you get a lot of eye test and sort of imprecise stuff. It, to me, should be going much more the other direction where let's see a Big 10 Pac-12 challenge. Let's see an SEC ACC challenge where you're playing, teams from the other conference, and you have a pretty good top to bottom. Okay, hey, the Big 10 beat the Pac-12 in, it doesn't work out exactly because now the Big 10 has stolen a couple members, so now it's 14-10. But hey, the Big 10 has beat the Pac-12 in 8 of the 10 matchups this year, or the SEC beat the ACC in 10 of the 12 matchups this year. Okay, now you really know, hey, the ACC is really not good, or the SEC might be really good. So then you have more information about what the actual intra-conference games mean. If you're just playing in your own division, your own conference, you don't have enough data points to really be able to say, well, look, this is how good the SEC is versus the Big 12 versus the Big 10. Not that it keeps people on TV from saying that, but it really you don't have enough to discuss it intelligently. How about that? Let's wrap up here with I'm sure everyone has been sitting there very patiently with their hands raised in the back of the classroom. Excuse me, teacher. What do you mean the Big Ten has been requiring other teams to play non-Power 5 teams out of conference the last couple of years? Have you seen Michigan's schedule? I'm just going to read Michigan's out of conference schedule for 2022 and 2023. 2022, Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn. 2023, East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. Tony, do you notice anything about those 6 teams that I just named?
Yeah, I have not been following a lot of the expansion, so I don't know if all of teams have been moving, but I don't believe any of those teams are in Power 5 conferences.
That is correct. Yes.
Oh,
Michigan, and this was, you sometimes schedules change. Sometimes teams will cancel games. Okay, hey, if someone backs out of a series with you in, with a year or two of lead notice, hey, I get it. It can be hard to schedule games. Tony, do you know who Michigan was originally scheduled to play in 2022 and 2023 and why that series got canceled?
Yes, the UCLA Bruins, home and home, and it got canceled, I think, because Michigan paid them to cancel the series because they didn't want to play it.
Yes. So then Michigan canceled that series. There was an article, in case you're thinking we are being haters, you can just Google the UCLA Michigan series and find an article from MLive explaining all about it. They canceled the UCLA series back in 2019 and replaced them with Hawaii and ECU. So, I guess, Tony, my question is Jim Harbaugh a creative visionary way ahead of his time, courageously scheduling himself 6 easy non-conference wins over 2 years to get his way into the college football playoff?
Clearly, and I also wonder if he called in, why didn't they just call in sick to the UCLA games? I mean, that's...
Wouldn't be the first time.
Actually, it would have been. And then the third time, of course, would have been the 2020 game because they would have canceled it previously. But I see what you're saying, Tom.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand technically why they got away with it in 2022 because UConn is one of these exemption teams as an independent with Notre Dame, very similar, BYU, very similar, the service academies. Where's the rule enforcement here in this schedule, because this is terrible and it's terrible for the fans. Now, fortunately, this year the Michigan fans get Ohio State coming to Ann Arbor, but this is a terrible non-conference schedule. Last year's was a terrible non-conference schedule. At some point, and we know Michigan Stadium is the loudest stadium in Ann Arbor, almost, as we have previously decided, but it's no good for the fans, and I still don't understand. Is this the rule? Should there be like an asterisk? Big Ten rule asterisk.
Yeah, it does. It feels like you watch. When you watch these games, when you watch the ESPN studio shows talking about these games, everyone talks about how this is terrible for the fans. Why are you doing this? This is not what college football is supposed to be. What do people look forward to? They look forward to the big name interconference matchups. Why isn't Michigan playing a home and home with Georgia or with Texas or whatever? And then the Big Ten is now setting it up where you can do more of these and fewer. You're sort of directly incentivizing people to do this because of, as we discussed, money ? TV ? College football playoff. Putting your thumb on the scale in order to get to 6 bowl wins, whatever, 6 wins in a bowl game, whatever. This is one of those things where this is just sort of the way it seems to work now, but it's probably not the way it should work because it doesn't, it gives you fewer high quality college football games. And the big payoff for fans is ... Do
you think we'll, in the next few years, when some of these, because the smaller team schedules, you can schedule those 2 or 3 years in advance. Do you think we start seeing those put back into like mid-November, the week before the rivalry game? Are they going to go full SEC with their non-conference scheduling?
Well, I remember back in 2006, I think Michigan played like Ball State the week before they played Ohio State and had a really close, gross game the week before the Ohio State game, where it was basically the SEC SoCon Challenge Day. I think you're not going to be able to see, again, this is a case where TV driving everything that happens in the sport is probably going to work in the favor of Ohio State or in favor of fans, where if you have SEC SoCon Challenge week and the best game is Kentucky and the Citadel, like that, your TV network partners are not going to be happy with you. So you're going to have to spread those out to a certain degree. You can't give people just absolute garbage and expect them to continue paying you lots of money. So that will probably spread out. But, we've seen, I think Ohio State played San Jose State in the middle of October or early November in 2002. I think they might have had a New Mexico State game kind of in the middle of the season at a weird time at one point. This is, I think there's a real possibility that you see some of those schedules maybe shifting around a little bit, because then you get more, you get a few conference games during the early weeks of the season, and then you get some non-conference stuff sort of sprinkled in, and Ohio State's going to play whatever, Louisiana Monroe, and it's going to be on Peacock in 2027 or whatever it is. And, is it better for the fans? No, but at least the schools are making more money. So it is, an inexorable march to the bank, and, not fantastic, not a great thing, but, the Big Ten hasn't really been enforcing this rule. So how much of a change is it really? We'll all find out together in the next couple of years. And what is the reason behind it? Well, we'll all find out together probably sooner than that. But it'll certainly be, one more change. Throw another change on the pile for 2024, which is going to be the most different year from the previous year, maybe in the history of college football, with all the conference realignment, with all the 12-team college football playoff expansion, and much more all happening next year. So enjoy this football season. It's going to be the last one like this, maybe ever. So should be an interesting year. Should be a fun year at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'll be covering all that stuff. We'll be covering recruiting. We'll be covering transfer portal, all the transfer portal news, all that fun stuff. All there. You can find us also at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. You can find us at youtube.com/@CFB Playbook. That is our new college football playbook channel. Lots of interesting content there in terms of scheme, in terms of national college football, interviews. We went to the NFL Draft Combine and posted a bunch of great stuff there. So you're going to want to be subscribed there as well. Just hit that bell so you get notified when we post new content there, and as well as at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.